Hey guys, this is DCHL Devin here, and I wanted to give you another how to play video, and this time we're going to go ahead and cover the force of Harad. Harad is an extremely competitive force, and one that offers a plethora of options for everything: cav, monsters, heavy-hitting troops, light infantry, everything. You name it, Harad's got it. This is an awesome race, and I highly recommend that anybody who wants to consider this, definitely go ahead and purchase it. It is one of those races, however, that is probably never going to see an update again unless an entire source book is updated. So there is that, but luckily the race is already pretty fleshed out with a plenty amount of troops, so you shouldn't get bored very easily with these guys. I think you're going to have a lot of fun. So let's get started. Now, when we talk about the strengths of Harad, we got to talk about the shooting. Harad has tons of it. More than half its race has some type of firing method, and Harad has every single shooting method in the game, or at least most every shooting method that's worth mentioning. It's got the regular bows with the Haradrim warriors, all at a shoot 3-up accuracy, so they shoot extremely well. They also reroll ones. A lot of this army has poison shots, which allow them to reroll all their ones when shooting. And the most important thing to mention here is actually the Betrayer. The Betrayer here is often fielded with them to reroll ones and twos. This army can shoot a lot, hits 2/3 of the time, and rerolls actually a third of their shots whenever they have the Betrayer in play. Another shooting unit you'll see in Harad a lot is the Muhad. The Muhad have blowpipes. These are 12-inch shooting weapons that fire like crossbows. Most often you will wait to see if your Haradrim can get the enemy to move to you and then start firing the blowpipes, so the enemy starts seeing more fire as they get closer to get toward you to stop these arrows in this rain of hell. Another shooting unit you'll see in Harad is the Corsairs. The Corsairs all have throwing knives, so even after they're done firing at the enemy, they can have a Shunt 3 weapon, throwing weapon, and also to charge into combat with. And also you have the Corsair Arbalest. Other than the Isengard units, crossbows are pretty much nowhere to be found rather than these guys. This is the only other way to get crossbows in your army is the Corsair Arbalest. They have a Shunt 4 just like Isengard, but they also function in an anti-archer role because of the fact that they have Pavises, which makes them be wounded on 6s. Or I'm sorry, their defense goes to 6 when being shot at. This is definitely a unit I also recommend worth taking. Now, the last thing worth mentioning with shooting with Harad is the fact that they can ignore the bow limit when taking a certain type of force. If they don't take any Muhad or Corsair Arbalest, it's actually listed in the rules manual what they can take. When you only take those certain units, their bow limit increases to 50%. Now, you can still take the Betrayer and the Haradrim warriors, so you can actually field 50% of your army as bows and then reroll all 1s and 2s. This is actually an incredibly effective strategy that a lot of people like to use. It pretty much rains terror onto the enemy. It's really hard to stop. You need a lot of heroic marches and everything to get through this hail of arrows. Now, normally I wouldn't talk about a couple units being thrown into a race as having a certain fight value as an advantage for the entire race. However, other than elves, it's actually kind of impossible to get fight 5 without certain key heroes or anything else, but this race actually does it on its own. It has the Corsair Reavers, which actually don't have a model, so I'm actually featuring the normal Corsairs here. Most people use these to proxy for them. And the Corsair Reavers have 2 attacks and fight 5. They can actually go toe-to-toe with elves with relative ease. And also you have the Castellans of Umbar. These are an upgraded version of the normal, they're not called Morgul Knights, but Black Numenorians. And they also have fight 5. So these 2 units here are actually some of the best to go against elves, and they're actually one of the only ones that can actually do it unless you take actual heroes. Otherwise, elves outfight most races every time. So fight value has to be mentioned when talking about this race. Now, while we're on the subject of stat lines, we actually have to also mention that Harad has a lot of affordable 2-attack units. 2 attacks is actually something that many races can carry, but most of them do it in very high point valued units. The only one that doesn't have that problem is the Azog's Hunters with their normal unit, the Hunter Orcs, having 2 attacks with a base cost really low. However, Harad has multiple other options that are all really low costed for what they can do. I'd actually argue that many of these are probably too cheap for their capabilities, and that's one thing that Harad has. A lot of very undercosted things in their race with a very high stat line. So these units do have clear weaknesses. They are not broken most often in the defense area, which we'll get to later. But in this case, you have the Watchers of Karna, the Corsair Reavers, and the half trolls, all at a really affordable points cost, and all having 2 attacks each, not to mention high fight values and a lot of other great uses. So I definitely recommend Harad when you're talking about throwing down a lot of dice onto the enemy. Alright, another one of the great options that Harad has is cav models. Now, Harad has arguably one of the best light cav models in the game. Haradrim Raiders are extremely cheap for what they're capable. They are extremely fragile, not very strong. However, the benefit is they have lances at probably one of the cheapest cav prices in the game. This makes them incredibly worth it. In fact, a lot of people will field dozens of these guys. They can take down opponents much, much larger than them with relative ease. You will expect them to die, but that's not a problem. If you need an upgraded version of them, a lot of people choose the Serpent Riders. The Serpent Riders are pretty much what the Haradrim Cav are, except they're fight 4 and have poisoned lances. So they hit even harder, and they also fight harder. They are an awesome choice and still at an extremely low point cost for what they can do. The last one is very powerful, especially when spammed. We're talking about the Camel Riders. This is actually the only race in the game to be able to field camels, so it's kind of a unique option for them. I like it a lot. And these guys actually create Strength 4 impact hits. This is not like throwing weapons. They just simply hit the enemy, sort of like a mumma kill. They slam into them, deal a Strength 4 hit, and they can do this to multiple targets if they multi-charge, and they kill them. If they kill them outright, they stop moving, so unlike throwing weapons, but still extremely powerful. It is not uncommon for waves of these guys to smash into enemy lines just to reduce them to tons of dead bodies without even having to roll for a fight or anything else. So these guys are definitely very powerful. In the old edition, they were a little bit stronger with 2 attacks and Strength 4 and Fight 4. Nowadays, they're actually a little bit more average stat lines, but that's okay because now you can field a lot more of them. Their cost has gone down by quite a bit, and or at least enough to allow them to be spammable. So I definitely recommend taking all of the Haradrim and Muhad options for cavalry. This race has some of the best cavalry in the game. Now when it comes to heroes, Harad doesn't have too many options. However, the options it has are very good. As far as ringwraiths are concerned, Harad actually has access to 3 of them, and it's all the combat version ringwraiths. It's the Knight of Umbar, the Kamul the Easterling, and the Betrayer. All of these are awesome combatants, especially when mounted, and that's pretty much where Harad wants to be with these guys. Also, it has other combat heroes as well. I'd say pretty much all of its heroes are combat related. Dalimur is a upgraded version of Ahashrin, which are assassins. The assassins seen here in the middle, and Suladan is actually a pretty average hero. Actually, I'd say he's pretty good. 333 from Might Will Fate, and stats in all the right places everywhere else. He's a pretty solid hero is what I'd say. The Golden King, however, is kind of the MVP in my opinion of the Harad force. I'd absolutely say to buy this guy. Not only does he count as a banner, but he's extremely strong and can really just crack through armored units, just dice through formations. He's actually incredibly powerful, though a little fragile. He also has a couple other bonuses, as well as the ability to pay your opponent to leave. Whenever they're broken or anything like that, or if they are taking any type of courage test, he can spend will to drop the courage test result by 1 for each will spent. And that's an incredibly useful ability, and actually kind of goes into the theme of Harad. I like the betrayal aspect. You have the Betrayer there, and the Golden King paying people to go away. So I think that's a really cool, unique theme for Harad. It has really good combat heroes. I'd say that their heroes are just an awesome addition to their force. Now, finally, now that you know how to play this race, you know the strengths and weaknesses, if you really like it, you might be wanting to start this race, but you might be on a budget. So I'm going to show you the best way to start this race with only $100, so that way you can easily play with a pretty effective force. The first thing I think you should buy is the Haradrim Command. Now, I know this sounds kind of cliche. Obviously, okay, the command pack. Now, I don't have all the command models here, so I'm using these 2 are actually correct, but this will be, I guess, the Taskmaster, and that's the Hornblower. But effectively, you get 4 models. The Hornblower you need for the Haradrim force because of the +1 to your courage rolls, and you will need the Taskmaster and a Haradrim Commander to give you 2 different heroes plus a Banner Bearer. So I figured with 2 heroes, you can get 2 full war bands, and that's just enough to play the game. So what do you need for the 2 war bands? The 2 best war bands to start with are the Haradrim Warriors and the Haradrim Raiders. Haradrim Warriors are $25, and Haradrim Raiders are $30. So that's a grand total of $40, $25, and $30, and that's going to be $95 for the entire group. So that's just under $100. Now let's say you want to switch it up a little bit, and you want to save a little bit more money, or just switch it up in general and you don't want to do this. Let me show you some other ways we can mix up this force. Alright, this is another way to mix up the grouping. It's just really taking out the two command the command squad and replacing it with buying the Golden King at $20 and a Mummic Muhad at $12.25. Now once again, I don't have the model with me. I apologize. I actually display a lot of my Haradrim in a glass case. They were painted by a professional, so I don't have them here with me. But just imagine that Muhad Chieftain that you see right next to the Golden King is a Muhad, a Mummic Muhad. Now, normally you can't play that model on foot. However, you can just proxy him as a Warhorn, wouldn't be a problem, or you can just proxy him as some kind of Haradrim War Chief. He actually is the part, he looks it from the movies, and it works appropriately. Also, the Golden King is a banner and a hero in his right, so therefore you save money on having to buy the command squad just by getting these two. It mixes it up a little bit, and in my opinion, you get more of an effective hero for this combination. And for a little bit more points, you can field a little bit of a larger army. Now, if you want to mix it up one more time, you want a really heavy cav force, but you also want to stay, once again, within $100, you can also do this list right here. This is two Haradrim Raiders packs at $30 each, a Haradrim Warriors pack at $25, and a Mummic Muhad, once again, just, I'm proxying the Muhad Chieftain, but the Mummic Muhad at $12.25. So at this, you have another pretty cheap, extremely effective force. All you have to do is paint one of these riders to be a little bit different, paint him a little bit more elaborate, and then you have a Haradrim Chieftain on horse. And also, the best part is, the Raiders packs come with banner carriers, so you don't even have to spend extra money on those. They can come with them, so you can easily just slot them into your points costs, and there you go. A cheap, effective way to make a Harad force. I highly doubt anyone's really going to complain about it. If you also want a Haradrim Chieftain for a very cheap cost, you also have this guy right here. This guy is a normal Haradrim, but he kind of looks chieftain-like. It looks like he's kind of in a leadership command position. All you have to do is paint this guy a little bit differently, and most people won't mind. They'll accept the fact that this guy can be a Haradrim chieftain, and there you go. Small, effective, $100. There's 3 ways you guys can do it, so if you want to start getting this race right now for under $100, this is the best way to do it, and you get a pretty effective army for very cheap. Alright guys, so those are the best ways I think to collect this army for extremely cheap, and why you should collect them, all the strengths and weaknesses. So let me know what you guys think. Tell me if I missed anything, if you guys would like to hear something else about the Haradrim or any future videos regarding strengths and weaknesses and tactics. Hopefully I'll see you next time.